and welcome to another episode of Daddy Issues. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Craig Jakes.
And I'm Don Tretler, Fatherhood Services Coordinator with Early Education Services.
And since it's so close to Father's Day, and this is a show about dadding, I definitely like your verbiage.
Right.
I'm definitely going to keep using that too. We figured we'd talk about Father's Day.
Father's Day, yeah. Our holiday is coming up. So here we are, two dads talking about our experience as fathers, and here's the holiday that celebrates us, which is great. So we thought we'd talk about that today.
Also known as not quite as good as Mother's Day.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think the great Bill Cosby once said, for Mother's Day, you would scrape and save and do everything you can to get something really nice. Your dad, you'd walk up like the day of and say, hey, can I borrow $5? Go buy him a pack of cigarettes and smoke half of them on the way to give them to him,
There you go, the great Bill Cosby.
Well,
who wrote the book, Fatherhood. He wrote the book on it.
True. Actually, didn't Paul Reiser also do a book called Fatherhood?
Parenthood.
Or Parenthood, yes.
Yeah.
He also did Couplehood, but...
Couplehood, yeah. So we've got a day to celebrate dads, which is pretty great. And I was thinking about Father's Day, that maybe we could talk about some of our favorite Father's Days. Craig is the father of 4, and he could certainly talk about some of his favorite experiences and his favorite Father's Days. Do you have any that come to mind?
Honestly, my preference would be just let me relax that day. It never turns out that way, ever. I mean, this weekend, we're going to go see my mom for Father's Day and have a big barbecue. I'm not going to have to run the grill. It's like my mom's like, no, we're going to do this for you. You just, the kids are going to go swimming and I'm going to work the grill and do burgers and dogs. And I was like, sounds good. I can actually relax. I'm not going to be allowed to drink at this barbecue because I am the driver. It's kind of hard when,
Right.
Jen doesn't have her license, so,
Have you had any favorite gifts from any of your children?
Oh, man. I would have to say both of my biological children have written poems at school that in different ways were influenced by my relationship with them. And they're both hanging on my fridge still, and they've been there for quite a long time. And this was since the divorce. So the fact that, they were like told to write a poem in school or whatever, it wasn't that they were written for Father's Day, but it was our relationship that inspired them. My oldest son wrote one about his love of horror movies. And, one of the things he put in there was, what a good time he has watching them with Dad. The other one, Joey wrote one that was about his faith in God, and he, threw in, the fact that I bring him to church and stuff, So, both of those are up, and they're very different topics, but it's, things that they feel a connection with me about. And even though they weren't written specifically as Father's Day gifts, they definitely mean a lot to me because it's like, you were given just a random assignment at school and it turned into, I'm going to express something about how I feel about Dad. And I think that's more touching than you need to come up with something about your father. And you know what I mean? The fact that they were just inspired to do so makes it even more special.
Right. Well, that's cool. I'm trying to think about, I think one of my favorite gifts that I've ever gotten, I still have it on my refrigerator, is it's like a poem that my son created, and it's laminated, and it's a laminated picture, and I keep it up all the time, just to let him know how much I appreciate being a dad. I know that I take it really seriously. I waited a long time to be a dad. I'm sure some of you folks have noticed when you tune in and you see me as a dad of a 9-year-old boy and said, oh, what's that, guys? I'm actually old enough to be like a grandfather by now. But
well, men's plumbing works a lot longer than women's, so you had time.
Yeah. And by the time it came time and we made the decision to have a child, I had sown some of my wild oats. So as a parent now, I'm not necessarily missing, going out with my friends or partying or, a lot of the stuff that I think people feel like they miss out on when they have children. It never really occurs to me. I'm pretty happy being a parent, and I really treasure it. I really treasure being a dad, and it's very important to me. And like I say, I put that on my refrigerator and everything, and let my son know that. Like you, I think, one of the things I like for Father's Day, and my dad always used to say this too, and we always used to, roll our eyes, is that, the greatest gift that I could have is to spend time with my children. And it is true. So I plan on spending the day with my son, and that's going to be kind of my gift. Though, as I was talking to you, I thought about something that I'd really like that I've been dragging my feet on. I'd love to get like a portrait, like a picture taken of me and my son in our sports gear together. I've wanted to do that. So I think this year, maybe I'm gonna do it.
Well, and then I had mentioned my 2 biological children, but my stepkids, Stephanie and Austin, I've pretty much been the father in their life. Just the situation is, he hasn't been around since before Austin was born, and was hardly there for Stephanie before he was incarcerated, is the issue there. So I've been the male role model, and sometimes they do call me dad, or people, will say, "Oh, who's that?" And, "Oh, that's my dad, Craig." But I don't insist on anything like that, because, but if that's how they feel, that's a gift to me. The fact that they're like, "Hey, like, we know that this guy is taking care of us." And they do stuff, artwork at school or whatever. And it's always a nice little surprise when they'll come in the house after school and it's like, "I made this for you," when it would be very easy to have that separation between, "Well, you're not my real father." They don't really do that. It's like they walk through the door and it's like, "Hey, I made this for you. Like, this is a picture of the family," and under dad is their picture of me.
Right. Well, perhaps we should make the distinction too. You can be somebody's biological father, where you've contributed to the creation of the individual, and then there's being a dad.
Absolutely.
And you can be somebody's dad without being the biological father.
My brother, again, technically stepbrother, but since I was 2, so it's 36, it's been a while. I usually don't, add the word step unless someone's like, "Oh, it's like, I know his mom. That's not your mom." You know what I mean? But, he at one point had told my dad, who was his stepfather, he's, "I'm here for you with some rough stuff that was going on." He's like, "I'm here for you, and my dad's having a similar hard time, and I don't even care. But it's bothering me that you're going through this," because he saw the way one was his biological father and one was the one there raising him and there for him all the time. And, at that point, he was mature enough to look at it and just go, "You're the one that's been the dad," which is kind of what you were saying.
Right.
Which, it definitely feels good when Stephanie and Austin are like, "Oh, well, that's my dad," Usually they say, "That's my dad, Craig." But again, I've never asked them to use that word. It's just, if that's how they feel, I'm willing to accept it. I'm not going to say, "Oh, no, you can't call me that," It's like, because I don't feel the other guy has earned the right to be called that anyway. I mean, they refer to him by his first name whenever they bring him up. It's like, "So David's still in jail?" That's
right. Because you filled the void. Because you filled the dad void. You've been doing a good job of dadding. You've been an excellent dadder.
Well, I've been trying to do an excellent job. Let's be honest. Didn't get a handbook when I became a father. Did not get one of, okay, now you're going to have the extra hurdle of they're not technically yours and you still have to be a father.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, well, the experience that you gained with Jason, who's your oldest, now Austin gets to benefit from that.
Yeah.
So, who's your youngest?
Yeah, mistakes that I've made with the oldest, yeah, I learn and adjust but sometimes I think I'm too male oriented for my girlfriend the way I want to, do things with the kids. He wanted to, she was mentioning this to you earlier about him riding on a bike the other day.
Right.
She mentioned this at the Coffee Connection, which I will bring up again later because we definitely got to give a shout out to Parks Place. But he got on a bike that was not his size. It was, he needed to grow before he could be on this bike. And this kid let him use the bike, and his mom freaked out. That's too big for you. You're going to fall. You're going to crash. And she kind of was trying to coddle him. And my answer was, no, he heard you. He knows you don't think he should be on it. You are correct, but he's not going to believe that until he does crash. And I said, let him. Then if he gets hurt, wipe away the tears, slap on a Band-Aid, and get him back out there. Because that's what he really needs, because that's what all kids need. And I've done the same, it was brought up in the Coffee Connection today, well, what about, are you separating the girl from the boys? I'm the same way with her. If she does something after being told you're gonna get hurt and then does get hurt, I'm like, hey, rub some dirt on it, get back out there, sport. It's like, you were warned.
Right.
But I always have that cushion of, I make sure they know that I do care. I will take care of the wounds, but then, you're going to have to realize you are responsible for the fact you got hurt.
Right.
But I think that that's better for their learning in the real world than just not coddle them and not let them go out without,
Right.
the boy in the bubble.
Yeah, I had that same type of attitude when when my son was much younger, and I only have one child. But when he would fall down, I tried to get out of the habit of, because you don't want. I'll say this for gender neutral. Okay, you don't want your children to cry. Necessarily to get into. You don't want to stop them from crying when they really need to cry, but you also don't want to, like you said, to wussify them, to coddle them. So my attitude about my son was always, if he fell down, I'll offer him a hand up. I don't want to be like, are you okay? Oh my God, oh.
So then the next time they fall down, even if it doesn't hurt, the crocodile tears start coming because they know you'll come over, and next thing you know, they're sitting in front of the television with a bowl of ice cream, and it's like, no.
Right. So that then, exactly. So that's what's going to happen is that they're going to start to associate getting attention with getting hurt or whatever, or some kind of dramatic thing. And I basically try to give them give my hand here. You can have. I'll give you the hand up and not make a big deal out of the pain or falling down or whatever.
Well, and then they know you're there for them. It's not that you're just standing back and it's like you have to deal with it all on your own. You help them with the stuff that's necessary, but you let them learn from the experience. And women like to say, men can't learn new tricks once they're a certain age. It's like, oh, a lot of women say, oh, it's so hard to retrain my boyfriend or my husband. Men can't be trained. I'll tell you what, it only takes one time of zipping up your fly too fast and getting some skin caught. You never forget to tuck before you zip again, ever. It happens once. You say a man can't learn new tricks, it's like the first time that happens, done. Every time there's that little siren going, tuck, then zip. You know what I mean? So men can learn. Teach that at an early age.
Exactly. Another piece about being a dad, and something that I've been thinking about and thinking that I really need to embrace it, is being the person that helps to push our children outside of their comfort zone. Where moms necessarily, and I'm generalizing, but moms are concerned with trying to nurture the children, trying to keep them safe. And that as a dad, possibly what we need to do is embrace the role of helping to push them outside of their comfort zone so that they can explore and learn to do some of those new things.
Yeah, and that's a big topic of, discussion politically, or not politically, but like, politically correct people like to say, oh, well, you can't say that there's a difference between the role of mom and dad. There absolutely is. And whether it's from a belief in, a faith, or if you believe in nature versus God, or however you want to look at it, men have a job in the raising of the family, and it's a different one than the mom. That doesn't mean dad can't hug the kid and comfort him when the kid's upset. It just means the mom's usually equipped better at that part. The man is more the provider, the protector. Now, yes, they can be interchangeable for some things, but for the most part, the best way to raise a kid, in my personal belief, is having both of those and working together as a unit.
Right.
Now, with a divorce under my belt, she and I aren't really working together on a lot of things. Obviously, if we could have worked together, maybe there wouldn't have been a divorce in the first place.
Right. Right. And I think a lot of people agree with you. I mean, I know that the National Fatherhood Initiative, who puts out some of those commercials, make time to be a dad. You know the ones I'm talking about, the dad who's wearing his robe and he's playing Jedi with his kids, and it's all the same thing. A lot of where they're coming from comes from a mom, a dad, a family, that the belief that having a mom and a dad working together for a child, if possible, to keep a family together is the ideal situation. And then by extension, once there's been a divorce, which I've gone through as well, is to try to work. And this is something that when I work with the dads, especially with the dedicated dad group down in Brattleboro, is I try to emphasize co-parenting. We did a workshop, and I called the workshop, "If we can't be a family, we should be a team." So it's that same type of a thing, that if you can't be in the same household and operate as a family, you can at least operate as a team where you can cooperate in the raising of your children. You can cooperate, communicate, and stay on board so that you know that your goal is to raise your children to the best of your abilities.
Makes sense. One thing that really bothered me, I listened to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and there was a clip played of a speech given by our president, where he was talking about how one of the biggest problems today is fathers who leave, and it is a huge problem, and I agreed with him on that. But then he said it takes courage to be a dad, and that kind of stuck with me as, wait, no, that's what you're supposed to do. You shouldn't, it's not that it takes courage, is that it takes cowardice to run away. That's the opposite of it takes courage. I mean, to me, it never would have crossed my mind, even through the divorce, to not be there with my kids as much as possible. I don't think that that's courage. I shouldn't be lauded for that. It's what I'm supposed to do. I don't want a medal. I just want my kids to know I'm there. I don't understand the mind frame of someone who, can just say, well, she and I aren't together, so I'm out of here. That never crossed my mind, and I don't understand people that are that way. But I don't like the fact that he used the word courage in his speech, because that sounds like, oh, you should have a statue built in your honor because you had the courage to have a job and support your children.
Exactly. So what you're saying is, it's not something special.
No.
Right? It is. It's the expectation, because we wouldn't necessarily say that about being a mom either. Is that it takes courage. It's basically, when we decide that we're going to have children, and it's a decision one way or the other. When we decide we're going to do this, this is the expectation. This is what we're expected to do. That we're expected to be able to hang in there. where, like you say, on the flip side, to walk away is cowardice. So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I can see your point of view with that, and I know that this president, and I know I wanted to say Bill Clinton had some stuff too to do with fatherhood, but this president has really made it made fatherhood a priority, at least in terms of his. He's got a website. If you get online, I think it's called fatherhood.gov. I think that's I'm pretty sure that's the government site that was kind of sparked by the president's efforts about fatherhood and stuff like that. And I think the president has taken it upon himself because he's African American or part African American to identify. He understands that there's a huge crisis in the African American community when it comes to fatherhood, when it comes to dads not stepping up, and that's and this is numbers. This has nothing to do with my personal opinion, but when you look at the numbers that people identify themselves by race, that African American children, it's a bigger crisis in their community that fewer African American children have dads or growing up with dads in their homes, where Hispanic.
He himself, his dad wasn't there for most of his life.
Right.
I mean, his mother raised him for the majority of his raising years.
Right. It's not as big a crisis in the white community or the Hispanic community where
Or the Asian community. I mean, you
Right.
want to talk about. See, that's one of the things where I personally am a huge fan of this country. I am. Because is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I look around the world and I know we're not supposed to judge. It's not the politically correct thing to do. But when, you got little girls being kidnapped from school because they had the audacity to go to school and being sold for, $12 to, sex traffickers and stuff. I'm sorry. I'm going to judge. I get it. Politically correct people say I'm not supposed to, but it's really hard not to judge that. It's like and it's not about religion or any of that to me. It's about any society that allows certain things. To me, it just doesn't make sense, And there I go with the I was talking about that earlier. See, I told you I do it a lot.
There you go.
But anyway, now I'm trying to remember what my point was because I distracted myself realizing
From our points, well, we were talking about the different races and how it's a much bigger crisis. Fatherhood is a much bigger crisis in the African American community than it. Not that it's not a crisis in all communities, but the African American community, and I think that's why the president decided that he happens to have that podium.
Right.
He has that high visibility in our country, and decided, you know what?
And I wasn't.
I'm going to do it.
And I didn't have a problem with what he was trying to say for the message. I just thought that, as well-spoken as the man can be with many subjects, I think he misspoke when he used the word courage. That was my only real issue with that. The idea of, hey, you're going to have kids, stick with it and raise them. That's what I'm doing, so how can I have a problem with that message?
Right.
It's just the way he worded it was what kind of made the hair on my neck just kind of stick up a little bit. Chris Rock had even mentioned that in one of his classic routines. I'm not going to quote it verbatim because, I don't want this show to have to air on HBO at midnight on, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he said that, he hates it when people come up and go, hey, I take care of my kids. He's like, well, good for you. No expectation. It's like, you're supposed to.
Right.
Like, I've never been to jail. Well, good for you. Like, what do you want? Like
Right.
a medal?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be something that, like you say, that we build a statue just because somebody's decided. I mean, it's an admirable quality to be a good father, but it's not necessarily
But it should be an inherent quality. That's the real problem.
Exactly. We shouldn't pat ourselves on the back. Oh yeah, it's like. We should pat each other on the back. I mean, I think, I'll say this on television. I think, I've met Craig's kids and I think they're terrific kids, which means he's doing a terrific job. And matter of fact, I've bumped into Craig outside of our, we both do this show together, but we also are part of the Coffee Connection, which takes place. It's a parents group. We get together and talk on Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock over at Parks Place. If anybody's interested, we'll send in a plug.
Yes, absolutely.
But I've also bumped into Craig several times. We bump into each other out in the community as Craig's doing stuff with his family. I mean, he's out there a lot. I bumped into him when I'm with my son a lot.
Also out there doing things with your kid.
Exactly, and it's, he's doing a great job. I think we should be patting each other on the back as opposed to patting myself on the back that I'm, doing whatever I'm doing. I do try to pat myself on the back to kind of keep myself rolling. As we mentioned before about, our kids being the product of, divorced marriages, and so I try to make sure that I keep my connection with my son. But that's more, I'm trying to drive myself to make sure that I do that for him.
Well, in my case, I would have to say I'm inspired by how my father handled the fact that, he went through a divorce with my mom. There was never a time when I was growing up that I did not feel that all it took is a phone call and he was there if I needed him for any reason, period. I never got the feeling that he wasn't accessible ever. And I want to make sure my kids feel that way about me. End of story. It's like, I feel that I had a good role model as a father, and I'm, like I've said before, I take a little bit of my parenting style from my mom, a little bit from my dad, and I just kind of gel them together in a way that makes sense to me, and that's what I try to do. And, but that's definitely something I got from my father. He's always been there.
We'll talk about it. We're talking about Father's Day. Why don't you, if you have a good dad story, talk about one of the stories with your own dad. One of the stories that's going to kind of leave a legacy. A story that you'll tell to your kids about your own dad. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Well, as soon as you said that, I had a couple jokes pop in my head, but I want to be real about this and not just, make it, because there's a few that I tell as if they're true stories and then the punchline hits. I don't want to really do that. But I don't know, he was building an addition onto the house that he was renting from his mother-in-law. My stepmother's parents owned the house that I basically grew up in when I was at my dad's. And, he built on an addition because my stepmother was having a at-home daycare and they needed the extra room. And, I was never big into carpentry, but there was many times when I was there on weekends that I was swinging a hammer and he was showing me the right way to do it. And, and even though it wasn't an activity I really liked, I look back on those times very fondly as another thing. He had a wood stove and he would split the wood. I would help him do that, and we'd just talk the labor wasn't something I enjoyed when I was 7, but it was time with Dad. And I think that, he was using that as, it's like, yes, we have to get this done, but there's no reason that we can't connect. I don't even know if it was, forefront of his mind at the time. I just think it came natural to him to be like, well, while we're doing this, let's have a man-to-man chat. You know what I mean? I think that it just came naturally to him to do that. I don't think it was like he planned it. It just worked out that way. But it seems like the crappier work that I had to help out around the house ended up being stuff that I did with him, and there was just chats that made me feel, connected during that time. So as much as I didn't like the work, those times are really important to me when I look back at my childhood.
Right. I know that my dad, when I was in high school, he bought an old car, like an old classic car, and I'm trying to think if my brother was around, but we used to work on it. We used to work on it together. So he'd hand me, a wrench or, say, go ahead, go take that off for me, And so we did that with each other for a while, which is not, it was not always pleasant because my father would lose his temper and stuff. But we did it together. It was projects we did together. And I know that, You know, and
Why did the scene from A Christmas Story just pop into my head when you said that he'd get? You know the one I'm talking about, right? The oh fudge.
right,
Yeah. Except that's not the word I said. I love that movie, by the way. But for
Exactly.
some reason, that's the image that just popped into my head when you were describing that.
I remember one time, and I was always, I like to think of myself as being, respectful to my parents. So, but one time as a man, I was building. My dad and I were building the porch on what used to be my house, and when we were doing that, I lost my temper with him one day, and I yelled at him. I said, "Get out of here!" And well, then I felt bad. I felt bad that I had yelled at him, so I apologized to him, and he was really gracious about it. He goes, "Yeah, you know what? That's okay. If you can't yell at your family and express your feelings to your family, who are you going to be able to express your feelings to?" You know? And he was the type of person that, he would apologize to me, and so when I apologized and everything, and another great gift that he gave to me is, when my dad was passing away in some of his last moments, he had he rallied for a little bit and he was able to talk to us. And he kind of looked at me because we had a pretty good relationship, but also it was a little bit, we were very different personalities. So it was a little bit, tense. We had a lot of tense moments, he and I. And he kind of looked at me and tried to make sure hey, we're square. He wanted to make sure that before he died, he let me know that he and I were square, that, I didn't need to carry around any baggage about our relationship. And, what an amazing man he was to be able to pull that off with me.
Yeah. And, having lost family members, that's a great gift that he did give you.
Right. Because people a lot of times do that, and they carry around the baggage from their relationship and say, "Oh, I should have said this, or should have done that," and he wanted to make sure he left with a clean slate. Amazing. That's to me, it amazes me. That's the type of person that he was.
Well, before we, get to the end of our Daddy Day episode, or Dadding Day. Maybe that's what we'll call this episode when we post it, Dadding Day.
Dadding Day.
The game that we like to play now and then on this show, where I just call it the Snopes game, where I look
The
up
Snopes game.
popular myths throughout whatever genre of myths, and I just have you go through true or false and see which ones you think were accurate and which ones weren't, based on the researchers at Snopes.com, which we've done this before, and the last time you nailed pretty much all of them, I think.
So get out your pens and paper, see if you can beat me on this, if you can play at home, and see if you can do better than I do.
And except for the last time, you could probably beat him pretty easy. Last time he nailed them, but before that he was on a
I haven't been
losing
very
streak.
good in the past.
But the subject that I looked up today was myths about music, either musicians or songs or albums or bands, somehow related to the music industry. True or false, the back of an early Beatles album contains a risque mistake that said, "It is with a good deal of pride and pleasure that this copulation has been presented." Should have said compilation, but it said copulation. True or false?
Is this true or false? I'm going to say this is false.
That was true.
Oh!
It was one of their early albums before they really hit it big in America, but yep.
So was it limited? They changed it?
I'm assuming they changed it when it got the American release because it was noticed by then, but someone typesetting just wrote the wrong word down. True or false, there was a rumor that Michael Jackson's phone number was actually in the UPC of the Thriller album, his phone number at the time.
Was in the UPC symbol.
Like the numbers that are there, the claim was it was actually his phone number was hidden in that.
No, false.
You're correct. I don't know where that came from, but apparently people thought it was real, and it was absolutely not. UPC symbols are not decided by whoever does the graphic art for an album cover. Never has been.
Right.
Well, you've probably heard the band KISS stands for Knights in Satan's Service, KISS. True or false?
Oh, I know that this is true.
Not according to anyone in KISS. Actually, Gene said that Paul and Peter and Gene, just the three of them, were in a car trying to decide what their band's name would be, and they were just couldn't think of it, got to a red light, and Paul Stanley said, "How about KISS?" And they just went, "Sure." That was the extent of where the name came from. It was just the word KISS. It had nothing to do with anything.
So Kiss doesn't have any satanic songs or anything.
It wasn't ever intended to be that.
I can't think of any Kiss songs that are like,
No.
I love the devil.
I haven't even heard them accused of, if you play it backwards, it says anything.
No.
There's others that have been accused of that, but I haven't even heard of that with it. And,
So I was kind of joking. I didn't
I
believe
know.
it.
I could tell by the look on your face you didn't really think that, but true or false, Columbia Records once released a album by the Byrds without a title.
Oh, true.
That is true. Completely by mistake. They just forgot to put the title on it. So then, after a certain amount of pressings with it that way, it actually says untitled on that album now. But that was the record company's mistake, not anyone else's. Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, had an album mistakenly titled No Answer. The rumor is an executive called someone connected with ELO, most likely a manager, to ask the name. The secretary placed the call and wrote on her note that she had got no answer. The exec thought that that was the title and printed No Answer as the title to the album. Now that's the rumor. Is that true or false?
I'll say true. It sounds like a great story.
It's absolutely true that happened. Okay, you've probably heard of this one. Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas supposedly had choked to death on a ham sandwich. True or false?
I've heard this. Yes, true.
That one's false. She actually died of fatty myocardial degeneration due to obesity.
Wow.
There was nothing blocking her throat in
She
any way
didn't choke to death.
on anything.
How about that? In all these years, here I've been thinking Mama Cass choked on something.
Yep. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but she didn't die from choking at all. It was,
Wow.
she died of fat.
Son of a gun.
There was a rumor right after 9/11 that went around because they listed on the internet, people voted on what the most patriotic songs were, and next to the Star Spangled Banner was God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood. And then the rumor got out that they shouldn't have picked his song because supposedly he dodged the draft by fleeing to Canada. So the fact that he said, I will stand and fight and defend her, like in the lyrics, people were a little upset saying, well, he's a draft dodger, so that's kind of messed up that he's got one of the top two most patriotic songs about this country. But is that actually true, or was that a false accusation?
That he was a draft dodger?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was false.
That was false. He was a 3A classification, and you were in the military, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you know what the 3A classification is? It's a hardship deferral or deferment because he had more than one child at age 17. So they classified him as exempt from even being in the draft because him not being there for multiple kids, at that point they had changed the rules where, no, if you're the only male that can take care of these kids in the fatherhood role, you're not going to be sent to war.
Right.
So he was never eligible for the draft once he turned 18. But it is kind of funny how people tried to, be anti him because of their stance on the war itself, which those shouldn't connect, You don't have to hate people who support, the action of the troops just because you don't like the action that the troops are taking.
Right.
Aerosmith once decided to play their set list backwards. opened with their encore, and then proceeded to walk off the stage because they were high and were so used to leaving after that song. That's a rumor that went around.
That's pretty funny. They decide to play their set backwards.
Yeah, like in a daze, they're like, hey, let's play it in reverse order. Played their, last song first. We're so used to, we play that song, we leave. So they did.
Wow. Wow. All right, yeah, I'll buy that.
No, false.
Nope, false.
But it is a good story.
Sounds fun.
You almost wish it was true. Eric Clapton's song Tears in Heaven is a tribute to his preschool son who died in an accident.
That's what I thought, yes.
That
True.
one is true. Absolutely. True or false? Lauryn Hill once announced that she would rather die than have white people buy her album.
Wow.
She was in the Fugees and then had her solo album, and then that was pretty much it. But there was a rumor that went around. I also heard it that she claimed she would rather have her kids starve than feed them with money that she got from selling her album to white people.
Wow.
So I've heard it both ways, but did she actually ever say that?
No, she never
didn't.
said that.
But that was something people were vehement about. She absolutely said it. She never said it. True or false? Blood from the 4 members of KISS was mixed with red ink in the very first KISS comic book.
Yes.
That is a fact. And I mean, they have a thing like describing it in the inside cover of that comic book, explaining how they did it.
That's why they were knights in Satan's service.
Or they just
Yeah.
thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to say that our blood's mixed with the red ink?
You're right.
Michael Nesmith of the Monkees, his mother invented the liquid paper correction fluid. I hadn't even heard this, but this was one that was there.
No.
That's actually true.
Actually true.
Yep. I hadn't even heard that rumor until I was looking up, rumors about musicians or music. True or false? Elvis was once told, "Keep driving a truck, you'll never make it as a singer."
Yes, somebody said that to him.
Yep, that absolutely happened to him. And how would you like to be the person who said that and then saw the heights that Elvis went to in this country on the music charts? And well, I'm not going to brag about his movies. Those were horrible. Every single movie was, I'm a singer and I race cars. I'm a singer in Hawaii. I'm a singer that's, working at a grocery store. And they had to sing every line. It's like, Elvis, can I have some lemonade? Lemonade. It's like, really? No, you don't have to sing everything. It's not a musical. Knock it off. You're not an actor. Stop it. But anyway, how about Van Halen? You've got to have heard this one. Insisted in their rider that all the green M&Ms be removed from a bowl of M&Ms in their dressing room before every show.
Baloney.
That was not only true, but it wasn't because they were stuck up and had any problem with the green M&Ms. What it was there were things that needed to be done with their stage equipment, the way their set was, would have been very dangerous if not paid meticulous attention to. So they put that in there in fine print, and they knew that if that wasn't followed, then some of the other things that were a safety hazard probably weren't followed, and they would refuse to play. If they were meticulous enough to pick out all the green M&Ms, then they were meticulous enough to make sure everything was set up correctly and make them safe on stage.
That's an interesting fact.
There's fireworks and all this stuff. They didn't want to get hurt. So that was their way of just checking to make sure that it was followed. True or false? The hard to understand lyrics of the song Louie Louie are really very filthy.
Jeez.
That's an old rumor. I mean, they banned it from the radio at the time because, couldn't understand it, but pretty sure it was talking about sex.
No, they're not filthy lyrics.
They're not filthy lyrics. The problem was people really did believe that at the time, and it really was banned from radio airwaves at the time because, well, he's mumbling, he must be talking about something nasty. But no. So you were correct. Alanis Morissette's song "You Oughta Know" is definitely a song about a lover that she had had in her past that she was very angry with. The rumor is it was Dave Coulier, the guy who played Uncle Joey on Full House, that she was actually talking about in the song. True or false?
False.
No one knows, because even when people brought that up to her, she refuses to answer. She said the guy it's about knows it's about him. End of subject. She refuses to give either answer. But one fact is she did work on a show called You Can't Do That on Television, which was filmed in Canada, and her mentor at the time, when she was 15, by the way, was Dave Coulier. So the time that the song was written about does line up with a time when she was spending an awful lot of time with Uncle Joey. But she's never confirmed it. She won't say who it's about. And of course, the last one, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the Beatles hit, was a reference to LSD, Lucy Sky Diamonds. True or false?
According to John Lennon, what he said was, wait a minute, what was it, Paul McCartney? Anyway, that his son came home from school with a drawing, and he said, "Whoa, what's that?" He said, "This is Lucy in the sky with diamonds." That's the official story.
Not only is that the official story, they have a copy of that picture on Snopes.com that you can look at. Her name was Lucy O'Donnell, and it was a picture of someone, and there was stars around, and they actually have a print of that picture that you can look at to back up John Lennon's version of that.
There you go.
Now, the rest of the lyrics may have been inspired by some trips that were taken, but the title was verbatim what his son had called that picture. So not only did you get that right, you knew the actual story.
Oh yeah.
But-
So you didn't have anything in any of those about Alice Cooper. So you didn't have that Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver grew up to be Alice Cooper,
I didn't see that one, no.
or that Alice Cooper bit the head off of a kitten or something.
Well, Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a bat. That actually did happen, but it wasn't intentional. He thought it was a rubber bat that had been thrown by an audience member, and it turned out not to be. I've heard an interview that Ozzy had done. I hadn't heard Alice Cooper had. I do know that Alice Cooper has a father who is a pastor in Florida, and he's a born-again Christian at this point, who still tours doing his rock shows, has a radio show that's rather, he doesn't have a personality for radio. Like, it's not an exciting show. The songs are great that he's playing. I like his music, but somehow he doesn't have whatever it is for having a radio show. But he does throw in on a nationally syndicated radio show a lot of references to his faith in God. And that comes from the fact that his father was a preacher. I do know that that's a fact, because he doesn't shut up about it at times.
What were some of the other ones? I'm trying to think when I was a kid. Some of the Alice Cooper rumors. He was somebody that had all these rumors that went around.
Well, Marilyn Manson had a bunch too. He was supposedly the kid who played Paul on The Wonder Years, and he grew up to be Marilyn Manson, or...
And that's not true?
No. He also supposedly had 2 ribs removed so that he could do things to himself because he could now bend far enough to do them. Also not true. There was many rumors about him.
What about if you play the, what's the song? You got to play backwards, and then
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I never trusted that though, because I've listened to some of the stuff backwards, and it's like, if you kind of try to hear it, you can hear something. For the most part, it doesn't sound anything like what it's supposed to.
I'm a little teapot. I'm a little teapot.
Well, I wouldn't trust myself. You know, I'll play the song backwards. It's like, kill your family, kill your family. And then what? I go do it, listen to it again. Bill loves Emily. Damn it! I heard wrong. No, you know, I just don't. I don't think there's too many people that would sit down and really try to figure out what words could I say forwards that if I play it backwards sounds like this. I just got the
He got the nod. He got the nod saying that, hey, you guys
Well,
are short on time, so you better
I
wrap
was
it up soon.
looking in the monitor and I could see that clock behind you.
Sure enough, holy guacamole.
So I guess we should probably get out of here.
Wait, we should
First, I
we should
will
do our
say-
plugs.
I will say our email address is wegotdaddyissues@yahoo.com. Any feedback is wonderful. Ideas for topics for us to discuss, any of that.
If you think I look handsome on television,
Or if you want to make him feel good and want to lie and say he looks handsome on television. If you want to tell me I look thinner than I am, please. Any sort of compliments are greatly accepted.
give the address again.
It's wegotdaddyissues@yahoo.com. Also,
We want to talk about the Coffee Connection,
Yep.
8 o'clock Thursday mornings over at Parks Place. So here I am announcing that time. It's almost summertime.
and
We
it
do
does
this while
change at
school is going.
times.
So we may be changing times. Call up Parks Place at 463-9927. Find out when the Coffee Connection, what time it's going to be on Thursday mornings.
And
I also want to plug the Dads group, which takes place up at Parks Place in Bellows Falls. We'll be meeting on Tuesday, the 24th, 6 p.m. We're going to be meeting up in Springfield at the Springfield Savings and Loan on Tuesday, the 17th at 6 p.m. If you're down in the Brattleboro area, you can stop at Dedicated Dads, which takes place on Thursday nights at 122 Bird Street, the Elmer Barrett III Fatherhood Center,
we only had 2 minutes.
6 p.m. And there's dinner provided over there. It's 122 Bird Street, so stop in Thursday nights.
All right, and have a happy Father's Day. And for this week, I'm Craig Jakes.
I'm Don Tretler,
And
and wait till your father gets home.